So, how many giant rats do we need to kill until we get to level 2? And what if they're kind of cute? Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we explore our love of geeky wisdom. We release new videos weekly, so please make sure you subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss out on any of our content. My name's Brian, and I hope you'll stick with me today as we delve into how to do character advancement for Dungeons & Dragons. I mean, how do you level up? What do you do for your players? Let's get rolling. Well, there are quite a few commonly accepted methods for character advancement, and the method with the deepest roots in the game is really based in awarding experience points. So experience points were really the original method that was placed in, meaning you defeated some monsters or you collected some gold and you got experience right on the spot, usually, or sometimes at the end of the session. And in early editions, this was really the only way that they did it. You gained those experience points as you went. And so it really lended itself to monsters and loot. There was even a way to calculate how much experience you would get for the amount of gold pieces that you collected. It's really kind of cool, but it's different from the way most people play the game now, although there are plenty of people still using this method. And it was the basis for most games that had experience points. Even video games later, you could even see the little experience points numbers collect after you vanquish a foe on screen. It'll just bloop, 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 and it'll show you how many numbers that you got. So this is sort of the OG method, and it really lends itself towards that. And that meant that the focus was really on combat and dungeon delving, but that makes sense. I mean, the game is Dungeons and Dragons, and if you're going through dungeons and killing the dragons, then it makes sense to reward your players that way. But there are some drawbacks to that, and so milestone advancement kind of came into play, where certain milestones were set, and then you would award those experience points after completing that milestone achievement. This was really good, and it was a good move for the game, I think, and it put us in a predicament where we didn't have to go back and really make notes every time you killed something and every time you collected something, but you really still had to track those XP because it was then based on, did I meet that goal? So the goals were laid out, hopefully, by the dungeon masters and the players to make sure that you had an idea of what you were trying to do. This also lent to a broadening of the game, I think, where it was not just combat focused or exploration focused, but it also lent itself to social encounters. So a social encounter could have a goal related to it: convince the guards to let you in, charm the queen into letting you take her army into battle. There's a lot of different things that could be played with a social sort of goal attached to it. So good stuff, but still, these had XP tied to them. And then there's not using experience points at all. But this tends to still be goal focused, but just not handing out XP. It was really you level up after certain points in the game. So this could be session based, meaning you play through a session, you move to level 1, you play through 3 more, you get to 2, and so on. It just depended on your campaign. But it could have also been story based, meaning if the characters make it to a certain point in the story, then that means they should be moved up to X level, whatever that's going to be. So this is sort of the established methods that most people have been using, and I'm not going to pretend that people didn't homebrew their own ways, because let's face it, this game almost explicitly tells you in most editions to do what you want with the rules. So even though these were the frameworks, they were often finagled a little bit, and you could change things as you needed to based on what you needed for your table. So that means if each character has a prologue, the group and the story for that group has chapters. So I like to use chapter advancement. Character prologue comes into play, like I mentioned, to set the stage, level set. Where are we starting from? What are these characters all about? What's their history? What do they like? What do they not like? And where are they starting from a race, class, and background mechanic standpoint? But if they are coming from that standpoint and then starting the story together, then I like to have the chapters of that story equal level advancement. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's completely session-based. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's completely story-based. It's really sort of a combination of the two. It's a hybrid approach. And so, as usual, I think the best way to really tell this story is with an example. So let's do that. Okay. We start out with, like I mentioned, the character prologue. This gets everybody their background, their backstory, their enemies that they already have, their friends that they already have, a pretty good idea of how they want to play their character, but they're coming into the game at level 1. So for the first session, which is my number at the top, they're still at first level, and they won't reach the end of that level until they complete that session. And by the way, you can watch the game and see how we did this. So you can then get to session 2, which will give them a chance to, again, find out more about their characters, learn how to play their characters if they're brand new, and that really takes us to the point where they can then level up after the end of that session. So the early stages of this, the first 3 sessions, by the way, are planned so that they can move to the next level by completing those sessions. But then what I do is I group them in sessions of 2, or in 2 sessions apiece. So sessions 4 and 5 will bring into the next chapter, and sessions 6 and 7 will bring them to the next chapters, and then sessions, you guessed it, 8 and 9 will bring them to the next chapter. So we've made it all the way to chapter 6, and this is a good way of making sure that we've got characters that are progressing in a way that makes sense for the story. But also, I know, because we talked about it in our session 0, that we're going to have 10 games, 10 sessions in this overall campaign. So by knowing that, it helps me plan things. Now, some people might say, is that limiting by saying you only have 10 sessions for this story? Not at all. Here's why. At the end of this, when they get through their last session and reach chapter 7, or really by the time they reach chapter 7 is really when they're getting to their 7th level character and then beyond, we can then have a wrap up. We have a story prologue. How did things turn out? What happened with the story? And so this is our way of doing sort of a campaign wrap up session to say, okay, where do we want to go from here? Would you like to continue with these characters, or would you like to roll up new characters for the next campaign that we're going to run? And that lets them decide, do we want to keep going with these people that we've had in our heads for the last 10 games, or do we want to start something new? If they want to keep going, now I can then plan out another set of 10, and this other set of 10 or so can be even more sessions grouped together for a level, because the higher in level that you go, the more challenging they become, and the harder it is to get past some of those challenges, as it should be. If you're playing a 10th level character, it should be harder and more of a challenge for you to move through things than it is when you're a first level character. The monsters scale up, but the world is the same. So maybe you're tackling things that you could not have tackled as a player and a character at first level. You're reaching out to the things that you would have stayed away from because you didn't have the abilities yet to get there. So this is a good way of kind of planning it out, or at least it's my way of planning it out so I can get a handle on where they should be. By the way, letting them know this gives them a good idea of how their character is going to progress. So often we have people start a game at level 1 and they never get past level 3 because people fall off and they can't do things. But when you are able to plan out sessions, schedule them ahead of time, have sessions on the books for the next 10 sessions, and just commit to 10, it's much easier than saying, hey, we're going to start a campaign that might last 15 years. This one may, if we wanted to, could last forever and ever, but we do it in pieces, right? So it's just a way that I like to handle it, and I'll let you know how it goes. Actually, you can see how it goes. So this is it. This is my way of combining both session and story advancement without having to worry about experience points, without having to worry about specific milestones, because the milestones will be agreed upon as I collaborate with my players, because we'll know that we need to hit certain things by the time these sessions conclude. So I think it's a good way to make sure that you're giving agency back to the player so that they feel that they're just as much a part as the growth of their characters, and it's not just something that me as the DM, or you as the DM in this case, have in your own hands and no one else can get a piece of that power, right? Like, they should know what it's going to take, and you should give them the tools to get there to level up their characters. So to see how I put all this into practice, by the way, you should check out those live stream campaigns that I'm talking about, but also the behind the screens videos that I have, where I do a sort of one-for-one relationship between session, then behind the screens video, where I talk about how I prepped for it, and then what I changed on the fly, and what I did to kind of help the game move along, and if I change any of the stuff that I'm talking about, because that's bound to happen. It's very much a regular D&D game for my players, but I like to make it a learning experience for anybody that's watching that's trying to be a DM and hasn't really picked it up yet. So thanks for watching and letting me contemplate a little geek philosophy about character advancement, and I'd like to leave you with a quote in my bad Master Yoda voice. "Ready, are you? What know you of ready?